I was called out at midnight one night to see a doctor's wife who was desperately ill with acute eclampsia. Do you know what eclampsia is? And toxemia of pregnancy, and the treatment is to get the baby out, which we did. And it was undiagnosed twins. So I had these premature twins. They were 2 months prem, about this big, little rabbits, you know. And Dr. David Spence, who was a very good obstetrician. Do you know David Spence? He's about my age and retired. And he and I spent all night resuscitating these little things, and then took them up in my car to King Edward the next day, because there was no flying doctor those days, and volunteer ambulances wouldn't take premature babies, understandably, because, you know, they didn't want people dying en route.
How did you resuscitate them?
Little bits of intravenous glucose, little bits of watery, solution, electrolyte solution, oxygen, turning them over, patting them, moving their arms and legs, stirring them up, and keeping them warm. Anyway, 25 years later, I was in Cable Beach Hotel in Broome, and a note was pushed under my door, "Meet me in the bar, Jodie." And I went down to the bar, and there was this gorgeous girl with long black hair sitting on a bar stool. This is one of the Prem babies. She'd heard my name mentioned and thought, oh, I must find out what happened when I do my exciting birth. And so that made it all work. It's not often you get that long-term follow-up, and that really made it worthwhile. And one of the oddest moments in my life, and I just had this flashback, was in intensive care at St. John's. I had one patient behind a screen, an old lady who was dying, and who I'd failed to do anything for. In fact, I think I'd done a laparotomy, and she got infected and one thing another, and she was clearly dying. And in the next cubicle was someone who I'd resurrected and was doing very well. And when I went to see them, I went to the first screen, and the relatives were abusing me, and then I'd go to the next screen where they all sort of hugging, and the contrast, it was just too difficult to sort of, emotionally, the whole thing was just supercharged, and it was very difficult, so I fled. Well, I must say, looking back, that the life of a country surgeon, country in particular, surgeon, is very stressful. There were often times when I felt, I don't want to continue doing this. I'd rather do work in a laboratory. I just had people. I don't want to have anything to do with them anymore. And this was a great antidote. And I had those 3 big adventures in my life. There was Vietnam, and then Nepal, and then the Antarctic. Maria was a great companion, that in case you think that settling down in a tent in a sleeping bag was a prospect of romance, remind everybody that if you put your hand outside the sleeping tent, going to sleeping bag, it would be snap frozen, minus 40 degrees, so there was no question of anything like that at all. I was in isolation, but at 2 o'clock in the morning I used to get dressed, sneak down through the long corridors and down the lifts to the front entrance, chat to the night porter, and I'd go for a long walk into Perth. Miss Maud's, unfortunately, was closed that time of the day, so I used to go for a long walk most nights. And the night nurse, and I used to report back to the sister, in sister station, the night sister, and they never stopped me going. They gave me a cocoa or coffee when I came back and had a chat to me. I think they understood I had a need to get out and get moving, and I was called to the front up to the board of the hospital in England. I was a junior registrar, and I had to stand in front of this table where the board members were serious-looking elderly gentlemen. Pictures around the walls of former chairman of the board, you know. And I was told that I'd committed a great error of judgment in that I had been asked by a patient how long our waiting list was. And I said to him, it's 7 years, about. He had a hernia, and it would be 7 years before he would have a chance of getting into hospital. And at that time, we were forbidden to tell anyone how long a waiting list was. If you were asked, you would say, well, you'll be sent for when there's a bed available, which to most people means next month, doesn't it? And I had told this young man, well, what's more, I made it worse by saying, if you want your hernia done quickly, go down to London on a Friday night, because most of the consultants will be out of town. They will have gone home, the countryside. Hospitals will be staffed by junior residents who are keen to increase their experience and numbers. Very important to get numbers in your logbook. Go in there and say that this hernia is become extremely painful and tender. And that means it's getting strangulated, you see. And it's got to be operated on immediately or within an hour or two. So you'll get taken to theatre by a keen young resident who'll operate on it, and surprise, surprise, it's not strangulated, but he doesn't mind. It's an extra item in his logbook, and you will have your hernia done. And unfortunately, the patient told his Member of Parliament, who asked a question in the House of Parliament about waiting lists. It didn't take them very long to find out I had leaked the information. And I got told that if I did this again, I'd lose my job. And that's one of the factors I came to Australia. I thought, I'm not going to work in this sort of bureaucracy. Interesting enough, some 10 years later, someone must have looked at the file, because I got a letter of apology saying they thought I'd like to know that now when a patient asks how long the waiting list is, they have to be told. And it's been raised in Parliament and so on. And the letter went on from the Minister of Health in England that if I wanted to come back to England, the future was golden and opportunities were rife, and they'd pay my fare.
And your reply?
2 finger salute.